What I'm going to do is, can I have your attention, please? We're going to get started again with Q&A. A bunch of folks already emailed in some questions, but I'm going to pass the microphone, let everyone introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll get started from there.
Meredith Pensack. I'm a long-term care insurance planning specialist. That's all I do. And I help people plan for mostly aging in place.
Hi, my name is Eileen Cohn. I am an occupational therapist, an aging in place specialist, and also a dementia advocate for All Care VNA.
I'm Vinny Talluto. I'm a strength and conditioning coach at Marc Cohen Strength and Conditioning. I'm actually responsible for this specimen right here. Yeah. I have clients as young as 12 years old and as old as 80 years old, so I see it all and I deal with it all.
I'm Ken Simmons. I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney in Woburn. Most of my clients are either planning for long-term care needs and costs, or they're faced with a family member entering a long-term care facility and trying to get through that process, admission, and working them through that transitional period.
Thanks, Ken. So I'm going to start off just with a question each, and then I'll throw it out to you folks and take it from there. So Ken, I've actually engaged Ken for my mom, and we did some planning. And so you were talking at the macro level about options, and I think we can get a little bit more tactical as we move down the line here with different professionals in the room. So can you talk about some strategies for, it may not be for necessarily all of our clients, but some of our clients, maybe their parents, that can be used. There's this notion that you've got to swear an oath of poverty before you qualify for Medicare. So
I think this will work. So I think when people are planning for the potential of an illness, facing long-term care or concerned about long-term care, the most important thing they can do is gather information from professionals, learn the roadmap of what's in front of them, and be able to make a decision about which tools to use. A tool could be privately paying to a certain point. A tool could be adjusting their assets through trust work or through other vehicles with the children. They may be concerned about providing for a disabled child for years down the road, and they want to take steps to make sure that their long-term costs don't impact the livelihood and the longevity of that child. And for those folks, we're looking at exploring, ways to not give things away, not hide things, but ways to position things that provide that long-term benefit for a family member. So we use irrevocable trust quite often. It's a flexible tool, it's a practical tool, and it can really address those concerns that people have. With a married couple, the limits with the long-term care Medicaid program, they're so low that there's a significant risk of the healthy spouse being impoverished. And the couple's working through ways to make sure that if person one fell ill at age 72 and the spouse is age 70 and we face the prospect of $600,000 in care costs, does that leave the other person with enough? And working through, pre-planning, maybe it's through restructuring, doing some tax work to adjust the asset pool, we can make sure that that spouse at age 74 is still covered despite pulling out a significant amount for the first spouse's care. So I think, again, information, understanding those rules, and the roadmap that's there allows them to look at their financial decisions and have that as a factor in terms of how they structure it and position it.
So Ken is very patient, I've noticed, and he's really exceptionally patient, and especially in working with elders. He'll go down as far as they want to go, explain. He doesn't mind explaining it over again. He works with the children. He's done a really great job for our family. Vin, you work at Marc Cohen Strength and Conditioning, and Mike's probably got one of the top training and conditioning companies in the United States. He's known as being one of the best gyms. Trains both professional athletes and people like me and you. I know I go in there and I start working out with them and I see the professional athletes doing something. I'm like, come on, I want to do that. He's like, no, you're going to hurt yourself. And he comes up with something else for me to do. But ultimately, you know, I keep reading over and over again, if there is a fountain of youth, arguably it's exercise and nutrition. And you talk about both at your gym. And you work a lot with, you know, a lot of people think of gyms and they think of like a meathead kind of person working out, but you're looking at mobility and basically able to get more juice out of life. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so like Mike talked about, we have a big emphasis on improving range of motion, flexibility, mobility, strength, things you're going to lose as you age. As after the age of 60, you lose 5 to 8% of strength and your range of motion. I don't say that to scare you, but these are things that we need, that you have the capacity to train and to prevent. Things like fall prevention training, balance training. These are all things that we do in our gym so that it doesn't happen later in life. And there's current research that just came out that grip strength actually is more indicative of a direct correlation between cardiovascular diseases, your rate of recovery after injury, and even hospital length stay. People usually associate blood pressure with it, but current research is showing that strength training is more indicative of it as well.
Thanks, Ken. I'm going to skip over you right now, Mark. You're going to be the
Absolutely.
star of the show in a moment again. So, Eileen,
Yes.
can you talk about tips to safety-proof your house?
Okay.
I think I need one of those children gates for me in certain cases.
There's quite a vast amount of different equipment and modifications that can be done to your home. The idea of aging in place is specifically that, providing something as simple as a grab bar to the extreme of putting in such a thing as an elevator to help people remain in their homes for a longer amount of time. And a big thing, like Vinny was saying, is fall prevention. So we do a lot of things just minimizing the risk, minimizing the scatter. A big thing nowadays is hoarding and having a lot of clutter in the home, and we even focus on that, trying to declutter. And just provide different bathroom equipment is typically the highest recommended one, as that is the most commonplace for a fall. So there's, you know, different seats and bars, and you know, nowadays you can turn your tub into a walk-in shower for minimal cost. There's a lot of things out there, and it doesn't necessarily have to look like an institution. It doesn't have to look like a hospital. The idea of universal design is that the equipment could serve anyone and look that way, but it would be designed specifically to help you prevent a fall in the home.
Thank you. Meredith, I've got questions in front of me. I may stray a little bit. And Tim, feel free to chime in here. So there used to be different kinds of long-term care insurance, private pay. And we saw a stat up there, and I was shocked at how little was involved. But the policies of 10 years ago seem a fair amount different than the policies of today. Can you just kind of compare and contrast what was there and why they've changed and what's available now and these hybrid products?
Sure. 10 years ago, we really didn't have many hybrid products. It was a traditional long-term care insurance where you're basically buying a pool of money with some inflation to grow that pool of money so that the money makes sense when you need it many years down the road, and the premium would be, you know, relatively, or actually very low compared to the benefit it used. Along the way, people became a little disenfranchised with that because the objection was, well, what if I never need it? Or, gee, I got a premium increase, I'm not happy about that. Or I really want to leave some money to my beneficiaries. So hybrids evolved out of desire from the consumer, and a hybrid long-term care policy can be a life insurance or an annuity that provides a significant amount of leverage for long-term care. And if long-term care is not needed, then there is a significant benefit to the beneficiary, or at a minimum a return of premium that you had put into it. So in essence, you got the policy for free all those years.
The initial products, did they fail Was it a bad deal for the insurance companies?
So it's really hard to predict 35 years into the future who's going to need and how many people are going to need our product. If you're talking to a 55-year-old who might not need care until they're 85, how do you price this product? So they had some assumptions that were wrong. They had lapse rate assumptions of about 5%. They assumed that over time, 5% of the population would walk away from their policy. They now know after so many years of claims experience that less than 1% will lapse a long-term care policy. So many more people went on claim and used the policy compared to what they had budgeted for. So that's like a lesson learned along the way.
Did this put any insurance companies out of business?
It didn't put them out of business, but they elected to stop selling new policies. I believe that once interest rates creep back up, if they ever do creep back up, then you're going to see some of those carriers that exited the market come back into the market.
Okay, great. I'm going to open it up to all of you, and I'm going to pass this mic along. Dr. Cooper, usually very shy, but we'll see.
So basically, you guys are talking about different aspects of aging. We're all clients of Mike. So let's assume that we age with unlimited funds, and the only thing we want to do, instead of worrying about falling or worrying about all the different aspects of leaving to our kids, who we really don't care about, that we're really looking for growing our brains, growing our bodies, and one of the things that you talked about, Mark, was the blue zones. Let's say that you look at the Sardinian mountain people, and they have this wonderful community and support systems. Well, what do we do here in the States? Well, it's the ideal situation where we have unlimited funds. We're clients of Mike's. And we want to grow our brains, and we want to challenge ourselves, and we want to stay physically healthy, and we eliminate all the other crap that goes around that, and all we want to do is do the best we can. Where would we live? Where would we live? Clearly, the villages, up until the point where do we go from there, after we can't play golf?
Yeah, it's not, I'd frame the question differently. It's not where do you live, it's what do you do while you live.
Exactly.
That's the key point. And it doesn't matter if you build a community around yourself and you stay connected. There's that very famous book that was written by the sociologist at Harvard about bowling alone. What has happened to civic life and civic engagement in this country, and can we trace certain really negative phenomenon with that? We need to reverse that trend. And as I said, the common element of successful aging in every society is staying engaged. It's that simple. It is not sitting in front of the tube, or sitting in front of the computer is not engagement.
But isn't there such a thing as growing your brain as you age through learning new languages,
Absolutely.
Challenging yourselves dramatically?
The other thing is that when faced with the decision, as you're aging, about whether to sort of continue at a particular level or take on a new challenge, always encouraged to take on a new challenge, precisely for that reason.
Thank you guys all for your information. I have a question. We're talking about financing and stuff. What about quality of care? How do we find out about that? I mean, I know it's, what's the Yelp for, people looking for quality of care?
So it's really interesting. There's a big debate going on right now in the area of long-term services and supports about how do you measure quality? What are the key issues? So I did a study a number of years ago. It turns out that what's particularly important is how you experience the care. It's not the tech. Like, if you're going to go, suppose you need heart surgery. If the surgeon is a jerk but has a 99.9% success rate, you don't care. You're taking that surgeon because that's what you want. You're not going to have to live with that surgeon, okay? When it comes to long-term service and supports, here's what turns out to be important. Can I understand the person? Guess what? This assault on immigration right now in this country. 1/3 of the workforce providing care to elders in the United States is immigrant. Okay? We have tremendous shortages right now in the workplace. And if for whatever reason people are dissuaded from coming or stop coming, the burden on families is just going to grow. That's kind of an aside. The main quality measures have to do with the nature of the relationship. I mean, you're having people come into your home, okay, who are going to help you maybe toilet, maybe bathe. And so what people say is most important to them is a feeling of trust, communication, safety. It's not whether when they dry my back, all of the water, that is so much less important than these other issues, especially in the home care setting. And there are a whole host of other quality measures in nursing homes. But they tend to be, and this is changing now, they tend to be more, rates of bed sore, or, bed sores and things like that, which doesn't really tell you. Now, to answer your question, there is something called Nursing Home Compare, where you can go on the Medicare.gov, type in Nursing Home Compare, and it will give you measures of quality. But the most important thing, if you're visiting a facility like that, you have to go and see it. And you walk in, and it's like that Supreme Court justice with respect to pornography. He can't define it, but he knows it when he sees it. Okay? You walk into a nursing home, you can tell pretty quickly whether it has the quality that you're looking for.
And if I could just make one comment on that. The clients that I've had that have been comfortable with the nursing home setting, the placement's been, they went to the facility, they interviewed them, but they took time and politely approached other families that were there and just said, can I steal a minute of your time, off the record, what's your impression, your feeling on it? And that type of interaction, I think, trumps almost anything else, because that's someone that's dealing with the current staff, the current doctors, the current care in the facility. So to me, that type of direct, what do you think, with someone that's experiencing it, is hands down the best approach in that environment anyway. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%.
If I can add to that too, just as a caregiver in the home, it is, as you were saying, Mark, the trust, and you're doing very personal things with these people that truly are strangers to each other. And there are measures, like they said, on websites that you can look up, client satisfaction, quality. But as we saw in the presentation today, a lot of people are staying home longer, and a lot of that burden is on families. And a lot of new programs are out there, such we have a program, it's called our Adult Foster Care Program, where we work through your insurance so that you, as the family member who is taking care of your parent or child, actually gets paid to do so. So, you're not pulling a stranger in, you're having your own family member take care of you, and they're not, if they have to quit their job in order to do so, there is still some sort of income, so it takes away that pressure as well. So there's a lot of new programs like that out there too.
Mark, could you go into CCRCs and what you see as trends and pros and cons of that whole area? I've got a lot of friends that are thinking of and going into CCRCs.
Right. CCRC is a continuing care retirement community, and what distinguishes those communities is typically they have the range of needed services right on a campus. So it's kind of campus setting. With the exception of some of the Quaker communities in Pennsylvania, where a lot of these got started, most CCRCs are fairly high-end. And so they're a wonderful solution for those people who have the resources to a couple of issues. I think Vinny makes a really good point that as we get older, especially as it relates to mobility, okay, we have natural declines in mobility. And so when you're in a continuing care retirement community, one of the real advantages is you don't have to go very far to be socially engaged, to interact with people. Typically, there's a lot of activities and so on. And there are different ways you can pay for these. One way is you put a lump sum down, and it can be $1 million. And it will pay for any long-term care you may need. It'll pay for your rent. And then when you pass away, a certain amount comes back. Sometimes it's all, the amount that you put down, and the CCRC is really using the interest and so on. So there are different ways to pay for these. Some of the newer models they're called life care at home, where you stay in your home, but that you have kind of a hub from the community, and they're reaching out to you in your home, and you pay a monthly fee, and so on. But I would say that it depends if you like that kind of living. For the most part, in a CCRC, you can do your own cooking if you want, or you have a dining room. A lot of them have nursing homes right on staff, assisted living. The idea is that if you become functionally impaired over time, the psychological and physical costs associated with a move, gets really hard to move the older you get, are much less in a CCRC. You're basically transferring. So those are some of the real advantages. But it's more a lifestyle. By the way, that's another reason why this nut is so hard to crack. Because unlike healthcare, you're talking about, with long-term care, you're talking about lifestyle questions and so on. It's much more complicated and interesting.
I just wanted to address one issue that is, before we get to nursing home and care, I've been working in the last few months with an organization called Lexington at Home, which is aging in place, is what we're trying to do. And we started an organization called the Community Network for Aging in Place. They were starting a chapter in Concord. We have one in Reading, trying to do one in Waltham. And our basic model for this is socialization. It's because if you are isolated and out of touch with people, it's harder to age. But socialization, mutual support, help at a pinch. We're not doing services like bathing and dressing and transportation, but just supporting each other. And this is something that we're very excited about, and is working well. And Lexington at Home has been our model. They've been going for almost 9 years.
That's great.
So, thank you.
An immediate follow-up to the CCRC question, do you feel there are any differences between corporate and not-for-profit CCRCs?
There have been some studies, but I haven't looked at this recently, but I don't think that they showed major differences, for-profit versus not-for-profit, CCRCs. It's attracting a very self-selected section of the population. And these folks know how to advocate for themselves as well. And there's a little bit better self-policing probably in that crowd. But I can't answer on the more recent research.
As the population of this country is, the age people living is increasing, the amount of dementia is also increasing. And you mentioned that you feel there'll be a breakthrough coming. Do you have any idea the time frame of when something like this might occur?
I hope it's before I'm gone.
Me too.
Before you need it.
Before I need it. Yeah. I mean, I like to keep up. I'm a social scientist, but I do like to keep up on some of what's happening. And there has been a lot of progress. One of the big challenges, frankly, it's not as if what happens with dementia is imagine there's a line here, and this is kind of normal aging, and this is abnormal aging, okay? Now, notice I didn't go like this, boom. It's not like all of a sudden one morning you wake up and you have dementia. Forget about what your spouse says. It's a continuum. So there are subtle changes that only at first you may notice, and then maybe your spouse. And a lot of the problem with some of the medications that are out there now is that by the time you go to the doctor, you're already way down that continuum. And so they're much less effective. So one of the challenges, how do we spot early signs of dementia and so on? But I'm...
Christine?
If somebody asks you, how do you... Now, I mean, I'll tell you what quite honestly, but this is going to scare people because it's already happening to me, right? There are subtle memory changes. But all of us have those moments when you're looking at somebody and you just cannot get their name out and so on. That's normal aging, you know? But it's very difficult. There are certain tests, simple word and memory skill tests and so on. But there's work to be done, that there's a tremendous amount of money going into this we don't want to have the National Institute on Health budget cut because there's a lot of money going into that. And, you know, I'll just put one thing in perspective when I think about dementia. Cancer. Think about in 1960 and now, 70% of cancers are cured. 70%. And the rest of them are treated like chronic illnesses that people can live with for a very long time. In the 60s, if somebody said you had cancer, that was it. It was a death sentence. We're going to see the same thing with dementia.
So, Tom, follow-up to that question. What's Mark?
Very good. No problem, Jack.
I want to follow up. So what's the thought process right now where research stands today with dementia? I've heard things from nutrition to exercise to word puzzles to socialization to help hold it at bay. And anyone on the panel has any information, I'd love to hear.
You just gave the correct answer. Okay? You gave it's not as if, you know, we're going to be able to take a dementia pill. I mean, it's a host of issues. Staying active, really interesting research on the impact of exercise on dementia. Has almost a prophylactic effect, especially cardio. And the question is, well, why is that? Part of the reason is because, you know, your brain is awash in blood, and the more active you are that way, the more, this is one theory anyway, the more there's opportunities to reduce some of the sticky plaque that is seen to be associated with that. But exercise, engagement, the brain exercise is a big one. Everyone sees the ads about, you know, the computer games and so on. I would say we have really good evidence that if you practice those, that you get really good at those. It's not clear long term. You know, the evidence just, it's hard. It's hard to be clear about that. But you get good at those games. It's interesting. That's a very good point. A lot of people are trying to, not just 47, older than that, learning new languages. Because one thing we do know, that you can continue to grow new synapses in your brain by doing things like that. Taking on challenges is a big deal.
Any other comments from anyone up here? Okay, go back.
Going back to the CCRCs, I have a number of clients, well, not a number, I have a few, who have had the resources to actually invest in a CCRC prior to their need for it. Now, a couple of them have extra homes down the Cape, etc. But I have one fellow, for example, had a really lovely condominium in Boston, sold that, moved to Brookhaven. Yes, he still has a place down the Cape, but he's perfectly happy in both places. So my question is, when will we be able to discern what is the propitious moment for us to actually think about investing in something like that? And the second part of that question is, are they getting better or are they getting worse? What should we think about that?
So the perfect answer came from Warren. You want to move probably a year or two before you have to, and not one day too late. Okay? So, but not to be flip about it, you do not want to wait until you feel like you are in decline. There are 3 things in life that are considered to be extremely traumatic on human beings. The death of a loved one, of course. The retirement is especially the way it has been historically. And what's the third one? A move. Transition, really difficult. So you want to be proactive about it. There's no right age, but it's like saying, when do I stop driving? Don't wait till you get in the accident to say, okay, now I'm going to stop. Yeah. That's right. Oh, I can tell you about long-term care insurance. Yeah. See, that's a question of, that's a lifestyle question and not a financial question, okay? If it was purely a financial question and you didn't care, then you could still go out and buy a long-term care insurance policy, okay? So there's much more wrapped up in a CCRC than just the financial piece of it. And so you may say, you know what, I want to actually move there when I'm still feeling really good and I can develop new friendships and relationships and be involved. Is the interest transferable? I think primarily, in most of them, it's not. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, my name is Susan Snow, and I work at Uville Place. It's an assisted living here in Lexington. And just talking about like the timing of when you move, and what we see a trend right now is that seniors are waiting longer and longer before they come to assisted living. They wait for a crisis, and then they come, and I never ever hear anybody say they're sorry that they came to assisted living. They're sorry they waited so long.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's so many things to do. We talk about exercise. We talk about engagement. We talk about community. You know, when people come earlier, they actually can enjoy themselves and be robust for a lot longer. But people are concerned about money. They're concerned about a change because it's scary. But it's unfortunate because so many people say, geez, I can't even participate in all the things that are available because I waited too long. And they physically can't do it, you know.
On that point, there's something else at play here, which has to do with why do we not plan so much? And there's a fundamental psychological issue at play here. And that is, it is very difficult for us to conceive of our future selves, okay? So today, I imagine, when I think about like, what do I want to do when I'm 80? I imagine myself today doing something at age 80. I try to tell my 27-year-old son that I actually, you know, don't feel all that much different than he probably does. And so this idea of you have to be forward-thinking and conceive of a future self that is different than your current self and try and plan for that. That's not easy.
Could I add a comment? I heard of a recent study with getting people to contribute more to the 401k plans. What they'll do is take a 22-year-old and they'll show an age picture of them at 65. Okay?
Interesting.
And they contribute more money to
I believe it. I believe that.
Hi, I'm Dave Linehan. I also work at All Care, and to piggyback on people staying at home longer, like you just mentioned, people going to assisted living, where do you see home care going? What are we going to have to treat in the home in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
That's a great question. Most companies, including the company that I founded and is still around, are trying to figure out how do we make the home into more of a clinical setting? It used to, the model in this country is that when you get sick or you have a problem, you go to a centralized facility to try and get help and care. And now there's a shift, a movement to try these urgent care centers and so on. And so I think that you've got Uber, you've got these apps where people would prefer, if they can, to have a nurse come to their home to do fall prevention, to have a personal trainer come into their home if possible. So we do have rapid growth in home and community-based care. Just one statistic. 20 years ago, if you looked at the Mass Health or Medicaid program, you had about 80% of the dollars were going to nursing home care and 20% to home and community-based care. Today, in 2014, those lines crossed. And you've got more dollars now going into home care. Because at the end of the day, people would prefer, if they could, to age in their home.
But doesn't that work counter to the socialization that we've been hearing about tonight?
Let's think about what stage we're talking about in terms of socialization. So being in your home does not mean that you're isolated. It means that when you have care needs, they're addressed in the home. But you still want to have engagement. For example, very few people, I think, would choose to move into a nursing home setting for socialization. They would move into a CCRC for socialization because there's a trajectory for that disability. Who said all alone? Look, there used to be a time when neighbors would knock on doors to check on neighbors. Not that long ago. Not that long ago. No, that's the whole idea, is you build support. I think what you were talking about is exactly what we're seeing. That's happening in Brookline, in Newton, and so on, where you have people that are sort of coming together, recognizing, hey, I want to stay in my home as long as I can. But not if it means that you're completely socially isolated. And that's the key. Yeah.
There's a little political overtone here, and I apologize for that. My mother-in-law is 90. She lives in Australia, the National Health. It seems to work out very well for her. She doesn't have a lot of money, but the council drops in on her and sees her. Her neighbors do knock on her door. She needs hearing aids, boom, she's got hearing aids, that's it. When she needs to go into care, it's not the best care. You can buy insurance to improve that care, but she's got care. There is that national health safety net. So my question is the rest of the world better off for national health, and should we be striving for that?
So it's very interesting you mentioned Australia, because I think a month ago, our president said that he thought the Australian health system was fantastic. So here's what I would say. The United States, certainly compared to Western Europe, is an outlier. Okay? It's an outlier, because those systems have, in one form or another, something that I was talking about here a little bit. They have some level of basic insurance for long-term services and supports, and then the private insurance industry wraps around that. Okay? And so if you're asking me my personal view, it's that we've had close to 30 to 40 years of the private insurance sector trying to address this problem nobly, making their best effort to do so. But it is a very difficult problem to do for one sector to handle on its own. So what I tried to talk about and say that I think is a reasonable approach is a comprehensive insurance approach that has the public sector picking up risk that the private sector won't cover, can't easily cover, and families taking personal responsibility and purchasing private insurance for the beginning part of the risk that will be more costly, less costly, and people can afford it more easily. So my own view is it's going to be really hard if we continue to rely on families to do it. I mean, there are social costs. Here's the real problem. Here are the social costs associated with caregiving. You go out of the workforce. Number one, there's lost productivity in the economy. Number two, you make accommodations. Over and over again, in particular, women will refuse promotions and so on. They have to work part-time. That costs the economy. I mean, those are real costs. We don't think about them that way. And that's why it's just going to get harder.
I think I agree with you, except for I would add one thing, is that the test of your system that you're proposing, if it still marginalizes marginalized people, it's no good.
We have a program for marginalized people in that regard. It's called Medicaid. And by the way, Medicaid is not a bad program. I mean, it's not a bad program at all. So we have this weird situation in the United States where we've got a good program for the poor. The rich can pretty much take care of themselves. And you got this whole middle class that either has to go broke paying for long-term care. They don't have private insurance options. That's what I'm trying to get us to think about.
Excellent. We're going to, oh, sorry, we'll take one more. Did you have a question?
I was just curious. I have a friend who works in the field and is always talking about these very innovative programs, things like co-housing or putting elderly housing in universities. And I'm just wondering, is there anything, real life going on like that inside the region? Kind of seem to really address the socialization issue in a very powerful way.
Have you read in the paper recently these initiatives called healthy aging? In the Globe, and there have been a number of articles about this, where communities are adopting what's called healthy aging factors. So they're trying to make communities more elder-friendly. Simple example: there's a great organization called Walk Boston, and what's their job in life? They're trying to make it easy for people to be able to walk places, making sure that there are sidewalks and so on and so forth. And there are more communities that are trying to adopt those sorts of things to make a community more age-friendly. You drive through some communities now, you see the street signs, much bigger print, so people can read them. Things of that sort. So there are those issues. People are becoming more aware of it. Why? Because we're going to be the majority of the public pretty soon. We care a lot about those issues.
So I'm going to give everyone a minute to close. Okay. So I'm going to ask everyone to give us one, based on the area of expertise, one actionable item everyone can take away with us as we get in our cars and drive home and think about. So you get to go first.
All right, I would say that you have done some excellent financial planning. You've probably done some excellent estate planning, but the thing that you might not have thought about is an unexpected health change and what the consequences could be to your retirement portfolio, to your healthy spouse, and to your grown children. So you just have to address the issue of long-term care personally and think about the consequences of not having a plan in place.
Well, it kind of goes together, but I think just the idea of aging in place and the opportunities now for people to be able to remain in their homes longer is really a growing trend, and there's a lot of outlets for that socialization. There are day programs that people go to. They're starting to do senior centers that coincide with preschool, so that there's that kind of connection between the two. But a big thing as you age in place, I think, and that social piece is really finding those meaningful roles even after you've retired. You've worked for so long, that's your primary role in life. And to lose that is very tough as well. And you see that with aging people. You lose those roles, you lose that pride, you kind of isolate yourself. So that's a big thing too. Find those activities to do for your brain, for your physical status and everything too.
So you had mentioned something about, the definition of a wealthy person. Do you know what it is? Someone that has just a little bit more than you. So I'll give you a close, but I was kind of curious where your gap fell.
I tend to think about it in terms of deciles. The top 20% really can take care of themselves. But that's not what I want to end with.
No. That wasn't me digressing a bit.
Yes.
Go ahead, you've got it now.
It goes back to the very first slide that I had on there, and there was this statement about how we've figured out how to add years to life, and now we need to figure out how to add life to those extra years. So one thing, act with intentionality.
I would say, contrary to belief, it's not normal to wake up with pain or stiffness. So seek help by maybe a fitness professional. If everyone should be able to squat, pick things up, carry loads, run around with their grandchildren, play golf on the weekends, and we can help you do those things at a lower risk of injury or pain.
And sort of a follow-up on what you said in terms of understanding and learning. I think the biggest thing, that benefit I see is people that communicate well with their loved one, children, in conveying their wishes as they age. You know, I have clients that will come in and the spouses they haven't had the discussion between them. And I think setting out goals and wishes that you want going down the road, those loved ones, as she mentioned, advocates, you know, they need to know what you want. So I think that type of communication is critical to carry that forward.
Thanks. So this is a little different format we did tonight. You've got a scorecard down there. You can rate how you like the event. I like mixing things up. I hate when you turn on TV and you get a talking head that only speaks to one side or the other side. I like to hear good, healthy conversation and debate. Our fall event is probably going to go back to more of financial. And we may try to do something on this tone. Markets, are they overpriced? Are we heading for a fall? Who knows? I'd like to have a couple of different parties up there debating it in a good, healthy kind of way. I like the back and forth. I hope you folks do too. Not just hearing one perspective, but I like to hear many perspectives. So I really enjoyed it tonight. But if you didn't like it, if you thought it stunk, that's fine. Let us know. And it's Christine who put it together. So we do have a Women in Wealth event, Empower Women series, which we've kicked off this year with Christine and Carrie and Jordy and others. If you haven't been to one of those events, sorry guys, you're not invited yet. I'm working it slowly, and Carrie keeps telling me no. But it is a series that we run once a month, and I think it's been very well received. And we're starting an entrepreneur series where I'm going to start a podcast of sorts with different entrepreneurs and talk about how they started the businesses, challenges they faced along the way, planning they've done and not done. I find entrepreneurs, I belong to a group, on average, are horrible planners. Hoping for that big liquidity event someday. So that's another series that we're launching. We're going to do some education around that. So we've got a lot of fun things going on. And if there's something you'd like to hear us speak about in the future, send us an email, give us a call. You'll probably come up with better ideas than us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.